Hello and welcome to today's webinar, which is all about mastering document control using SharePoint. My name is Dougie Wood, I'm a Microsoft MVP, and I'm joined today by Valto's Head of Sales, Martin.
Hello.
And basically what we're going to be doing today is talking about some of the most common challenges that we see our clients facing when it comes to managing documents correctly. And actually there's a wide range of different types of people that are managing documents. We work a lot actually with the manufacturing section, quality managers, and generally people who are working towards ISO management and things like that. But also there's a lot of people who are just managing things like policies and procedures that aren't necessarily involved with ISO that this solution benefits as well. What we're going to be doing is Martin's going to be running us through a demonstration of a pre-built solution that Valto offer as a package solution, which addresses all of the most common document management issues, which is version control, reviews and approvals, so actually making sure there's a frequent review cycle so documents are staying up to date. Approval processes, so there's actually a tracked auditable history of who has actually approved the documents and when. As well as that, it's quite a common requirement to have a centralized document store, basically being your single source of truth, meaning that everyone can get access to the latest documents via any device, via their desktop, tablets, mobile phones, things like that. And as well as that, we also have an additional feature, which not a lot of other solutions have, which is the ability to track who has actually read those particular documents in your document control. So essentially what this is that we can publish a document and then we can actually customize who as a grouping should be contacted to confirm that they've actually read this. This gives us a nice little audit history of exactly who's read it and when, and Martin's going to be sort of jumping into that a little bit further on. I should say as well that if you've got any questions at all, as we're doing this via YouTube, there is a comments feed just over to my shoulder that you can use, or there's a comments feed below if you're watching this after it was published live. Use the comments below, and we'll do our best to answer every question we can. So on that, I'll hand over to Martin now, just to kick us off through the demo.
Thank you, Dougie. We'll go straight into the demonstration system. So, as you can see straight away, the platform that it lives on is SharePoint. So great if you're using 365 and SharePoint already. Really nice and easy to set up and adopt. And what we've landed on at the moment is the initial landing page for the system here. So to give you some context, you can navigate to the system within your SharePoint environment a number of ways. It could be hidden behind a link or a tile like we can see. In this case here, all I've done is used our navigation menu and hopped over to the control document system that you can see there as well. And we're greeted with the larger tiles in front of us. The company here is completely made up. They're called Hollow. This is their intranet, and you can see branding and imagery and that kind of grey theme pulling through for the rest of the page as well. So this is really part one of the system. This initial landing page, and as you can see, the tiles at the top really are used to drive traffic to the right areas of this system. So straight away, the larger tile is for us to view all documents. There's a couple of tiles here which are accreditation specific, so to ISO 27001 and ISO 9001. The idea here is that you click on those, perhaps it takes you through to those documents that are relevant to that accreditation. You then have my document tracker, so this is now looking at me personally as an individual. Is there perhaps documents that I need to action, need to read and mark myself as compliant and having read and understood? And then there's expired documents too. But these are all interchangeable. They can be renamed, repurposed, and used to point people in the direction of that document library, but really to a specific view. And I'll come on to that in a little while.
I think that's the thing. For me, what I love about that is the fact that it is totally customizable. You can change the background images. So if you wanted to make it look more like your brand, you can have your own imagery in there. You don't have to have 5 tiles. You could have anywhere between 1 and 5. And as I say, you can link to any particular type of subcategories of documents that you want to make sure that people can easily access.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's really the main theme of this landing page, is that it is customizable. We can really align to how you want to drive traffic, how you want it to be presented, and really the main aim is to get it looking, feeling like yourselves, and get it to your branding, your imagery, and have it feel like your organization's page. As I scroll down with that in mind, we have some other examples of things that you could do on the landing page. We've got admin links here, so now perhaps we're focusing on those people that might be acting as reviewers reviewers or approvers of documents. And there's a few example links here, so they can specifically click on documents awaiting my action, documents close to review. We've got documents pending review. We've got documents pending approval as well. So again, purely examples. Again, you could have many different views attached to these tiles as well, and that you can get them to behave in any way that you want. Great. And then finally, we have a really small web part or widget, sometimes I refer to them as, that is just pulling through popular documents from the library, of course, that is attached to this system. This, again, you can chop and change. It doesn't have to be popular documents. It could be recently updated or trending documents and so on. Or, you don't have to have it here at all. So, again, just food for thought on how you can customize that landing page there. Great, perfect. Right, so we'll go into the second part of the system, and really, I suppose this is the system. It's the document library here within SharePoint, and appreciate when you load up this screen, there's a lot of data that you're being met with straight away. But to break it down really simply, what you have is you have your documents on the left-hand side here, and we can see examples of policies and procedures and different work orders and so on. And next to it in the columns, so from approval status and onwards, we have essentially columns that capture data, and that data is then used to bump this along a journey. And it just so happens that the journey in this particular system is a simple review and approval process, but also a way of getting others to read and acknowledge the system as well. And I'll come on to each of these columns and how they work, and some tips and tricks that you can use to get it working efficiently. Great. So we'll look at the complaints policy. We'll use this as our example here, and we'll go along the columns. So, of course, we have the complaints policy here. One thing that works really well within this system is your ability to see the version history of the documents. We can see there's a version number already, so we're at version 6.11 here. Now, this tells me that there's been previous versions, of course, to this document, and really nicely within SharePoint, clicking on the three dots and heading over to version history presents you with the full audit history of that document. I can scroll right the way down and look at all the different versions of this document that there's ever been, and I get presented with some really basic information as to what happened at what stage. So at version 5.0, I can see it was approved. There's some comments that you can add onto here. I can see who made the changes, the size of the changes as well. And again, there's some example comments a little bit further up as well. So you have that ability to cycle back right the way to the beginning of the document. You can see I'm at version 0.1 here. And I have the ability to go and view that document as well. So if I click on the drop down that's next to the date, I can view that version of the document, so I can see perhaps what it used to look like. I can even restore back to that previous version, and by clicking on restore, the previous version becomes our most current version. Really useful if perhaps you look at a document that's perhaps been a little bit of a mistake made, or you just want to rewind the clock. You can hit on restore, and it will shoot you straight back to that previous version of that document. That becomes the latest version for you. So really powerful, and think of that audit trail. If you need to evidence.
That's what I was going to say. For a lot of our customers that we speak to, this solution is something which is helping them during a time of an audit. So they've got an auditor coming in. They want to look at the documents, want to look at the versions of the documents, who changed what and when was it approved, when did it go through all these cycles, and all of this, every single document is clearly laid out. So we're finding people that used to spend loads of time with auditors, days, weeks potentially, are now managing to do it in half the time because everything's clearly laid out, everything's really easy to find in an auditable type of way.
Yeah, exactly. If you do have auditors coming in, I often think this system is a bit of a dream, really, for those kind of people. Everything underneath one roof. Great. So that's your version history. We then have columns that just give you some information about its kind of current state, so approval status. You'll note we've got the one draft version and the rest are all approved. You'll actually notice that this links really closely to the version number as well, in that anything that is approved ends in a 0.0. So these are considered your major versions of the documents here within the library. The idea with these major versions is that actually they're available to everybody to view. So everybody within the organization is able to come into the library and they can view the latest major version of that document. Our complaints policy that we're using as the example across the top here, you'll notice is in a draft status and it ends in the 6.11. Now, because it doesn't end in that 0.0, it's not a major version. Actually, there's some permissions in play here that mean only the reviewer and the approver are able to view the latest version of this document, or certainly those with the right permissions here within the library. So it gives you that peace of mind that the people with the right permissions, who typically will be your reviewers and your approvers of these documents, can tinker away in the background, update these documents before they go public to the rest of the organization, because everybody else in the business won't see version 6.11, they'll see 6.0. They'll only see that latest major version of the document. So peace of mind that you can carry on editing these documents, uploading them and tweaking them, and then when you're ready, submit that for approval, and then everybody else gets that latest major version. So yeah, a nice little feature there, leaning on the permissions within SharePoint. Great. We then have the department column. Really, this is just a nice way to group, filter, and sort the data. You can see here, if I click on the little drop down, I can sort it, I can filter it, I can group it. There's other column settings that we could take advantage of as well. But filtering is really simple. I just go ahead and click on one of the filter options there. So click on IT, and you'll notice suddenly, we're only presented with those IT documents. You'll also notice that the filters appear here in the top left-hand corner, so clicking on the X allows you to easily remove that filter. But these filters are really key because, well, they're stackable as well. So I can go ahead and I could look for documents that are in the IT department, but I could also perhaps filter where Joe is the reviewer, and it's going to pull through that information. We can see our filters are stacked here. And this is really useful because it creates your own unique URL at the top here. You can almost see in the URL where it's got filter field here. We can see it's filtering by Joe. You can see Joe's name just at the end here. So that's really useful because this URL at the top is now unique. It means that if we think back to our home page, those tiles that we had, I can attach that URL to one of the tiles, one of the links. You click on that tile and it presents you with this view that we've just set up. So again, thinking of driving traffic, ease of use and navigation in the tool, this is a really great way to be able to do that and to manage it as well for your end users.
And I think the other thing which is worth stressing on this is that all of these filters are completely customizable. So they can be the stock ones that you see here do come with a stock system, but we can add more onto it. So as I said before, we've worked with a lot of companies which are going through working different ISO accreditations, things like that. So it might be that you want to tag each of those documents with a different ISO accreditation. It might be that those documents relate to certain job roles only. So you want to tag them with a job role or an area of the business, like a department or business unit or whatever it is. What I'm trying to say here is that there's no limitation. We can add different types of columns and tag things in different ways to make it nice and easy for you and your users to find those documents.
Yeah, absolutely. And as Dougie said, you can then really start to make the system your own. You know, you can put things like categories that are your own language, your own terminology that you use. It doesn't have to be department like you see here. It could be document type, and you have things like policies, procedures, or work orders as options, different accreditations, as Dougie mentioned as well. So it's a really great way of being able to quickly sort, filter, and group that data. Great. We then have the next set of columns here where we've got review date, approval date, review period, reviewer, and approver. And it's these columns here that feed into a really simple workflow, and that's all about the review and the approval of the document. So the idea here is that you have a named reviewer and a named approver. They will be underneath these two columns here. And once the reviewer has got the document to a place where they're ready to go ahead and submit that, they select it and they simply click on submit for approval. And this is now where automation takes over. So gone are the days of emailing this over to somebody and typing that out and waiting for their response. This is leaning on the workflow that's built into the system so that that's it. That from the reviewer's perspective, that's kind of job done at this point. So they'll click on submit for approval. The workflow then will look at the data within the column here, namely the approver, and they're going to go ahead and it's going to send an automated email over to that approver as an FYI. This document's been submitted for approval, and it needs your go ahead. It needs your say so. So that email will contain two action buttons: accept or reject. Of course, a link to the document as well, so the approver can have a look, make sure that they're happy, and they have the final say. So clicking on those action buttons within that email prompts a little comment box to open as well. They're able to go ahead and add their thoughts. If it isn't going to be approved, it's going to be rejected. They can add their comments as to why it's been rejected. It's some feedback that the reviewer again will automatically receive via an email. They'll get that information and they can go again and make sure they're tweaking and updating and submitting again for approval. If it's approved, we're then going to see some of this information pre-populate itself based on the review period that's been assigned to the document when you upload it into here in the first place, and the approval date that the approver has given the green light. The review date will automatically be populated. So based on the review period and the approval date, we'll look at the review date, and that will automatically be populated within the system here. So again, with regards to manually inputting data onto the system, there's really not a lot for you to do. You'll upload the document into here, complete some of the basic information that it needs, submit it for approval, and away it goes. That's the automation kicking in and taking care of that document.
And it's worth mentioning there, some of the common questions we often get asked is, people often have very manual processes at the moment for things like version control and things like that when they put their documents in here. And there's a couple of different ways we can approach this, and we'll talk with you to understand your particular scenario, but often it can just be a case of inside the document, often there is version numbers and things like that which are being tracked manually in a table, and at some point you just put a line through that and say, we're now using the version numbers inside of SharePoint. But also as an optional extra of this system, it is an optional extra, we have worked with some organisations which choose to inject that version number into the document as well. So that's something else that potentially, if you required it, is possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of different customizations that you can do that build on this system like that. We've seen examples of whereby there needs to be an element of an e-signature, perhaps using a DocuSign, an Adobe sign. That can all be integrated into this system as well. So if you do need to evidence that, which I know some organizations do because adhering to certain legislation, that can all be built into this really, really nicely. Great, perfect. So yeah, the approver, Joe, in this case, is going to make the final decision. If, of course, he is rejecting the document, it will go back to the reviewer for them to review and update and make some changes. If the document is approved, this is where, of course, we'll jump up to the next major version number. So our version number underneath here, we'll jump from 6.11 straight up to 7. It'll be 7.0. Of course, based on what we discussed earlier, that version now becomes the default for everybody. They're able to go ahead and review that document. But it's also now where we'll look at things like the tracker group and the tracker required. And this really leans on the third part of our system here, which is the document tracker. Perfect for admins of the system who need to see who's reading the documents, who's marking themselves as compliant and having read and understood the content. And the very start of that is looking at the data within these two columns here. So once that document is in its latest major version, it's going to look first of all at this tracker required column. And this can be a simple tick box. It can be a yes or a no field. But essentially what it's going to do is it's going to look to see if there's that yes or that tick in here. And then it's going to look at the tracker groups. And essentially, if the tracker is required, which in this case it is, the document is then going to send automatically via an email, just like it did do for the reviewers and the approvers, to the named groups that you can see in the tracker group column. And by way of example, you can have a many-to-one relationship. So you can see there's 3 different groups listed here against the one document, but you can also have a one-to-one relationship as well. So perhaps just documentation that's relevant for only a certain group of individuals within the business. These groups tend to be your 365 security groups that you'll have that set up on your tenant already. If you don't, that's certainly something that we can assist with. But you can get very granular with these groups. You can start to pull on information that's within your Microsoft environment to look at people's job roles or their department or their location. And suddenly you can create this custom group that might be developers that are based in London, because perhaps you've got documentation that's only relevant to that group, and you can send it just to that group and that group alone without having everybody looped in and having to read and understand and approve a document that perhaps isn't really relevant to them. So that's where this tracker is really, really useful, and I'll come on to a view in just a second. But yeah, it just to highlight, it gives you the flexibility to not have to do that as well. For those documents that don't have a tick in the box here, it's still going to take advantage of the review and the approval process via the reviewer and the approver, but it won't send out to everybody. we appreciate that there's documentation that doesn't need to be sent out to everybody to read and understand. It's just a document that perhaps needs to go through a review and approval process. So that can live within here as well, without the need of having to send that to everybody else within the business, or certainly those within the named groups here. Great, so just to give you an idea of what this tracker looks like, within the navigation menu here, we've got the document tracker. We have a few different views set up, and again, you can look at this how you want to, but the views we have here are grouped by user, grouped by policy, or grouped by whether it's been read, yes or no. We'll have a look at group by policy. I'll just collapse the data breach one here. So we're just looking at the complaints policy. And this is this big brother view as to who's read the document, who's up to date with the latest version, and who isn't. And the red column here, yes or no, we can really clearly see that these people did read the document. The date is stamped as to when they did that as well. Of course, they received this via an email. So they click on the link to the document that's embedded within the email, but that doesn't tick this off the list for them. They have a physical button within that email they need to click on. That is them marking themselves as having read and understood the document. It's no good opening and closing it really quickly. That won't mark that as read here in the system. There's a physical button, so you're putting ownership on the end user from that perspective. So having their buy-in to actually reading and understanding the documents.
And as Martin says, it puts the kind of ownership on the employee, because let's say, for example, if there was a data breach and we found it was Joe Blogs that had leaked some of our company data or whatever it was, we can then, when we pull them into a meeting, we've got here digital signature basically that says, Joe Blogs, you have confirmed at this date and time that you have read our policy on XYZ, so you should know about it. This basically digitally transforms a lot of processes. I mean, we've seen a lot of organizations where this signature on policies is like physically on a piece of paper, massive books of paper that sit somewhere inside of the office that people have to go read, sign. There was an organization we worked with very recently where they were still printing off all their policies, sending them out to all of their different sites, and people had to read them, and then they had to come after that to head office to actually physically sign a piece of paper in the office to say that they've read all the policies. So if this is doing all of it, you can access all the policies and documents in one place, you can sign them off, and then you've got this list, and it makes it nice and easy as well. So like where Martin was talking before about filters, we can easily, and we'll come on to showing the filters in a second, but we can easily filter to find people who have not read things or drill into that information a little bit more. So yeah, I'll let you carry on, Martin.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's a really good point. The document tracker, very customizable in terms of how you want to view it. Of course, I went into the option where it's grouped by policy. You can see we've got a few views saved here in the top right. So grouped by user, my documents, or whether it's been read, yes or no. I'll come on to those in just a second. But it gives you that flexibility to really cut and look at the data how you want to, and focus in on certain areas if needed. The final piece just on the document tracker. So we've got Steve and Toby down the bottom here, who both have not read the document. These guys are receiving automated reminders in the background as well. The default is set to 30 days, but their email that they receive is worded in a way it's urgent, please read, this is overdue. And they have a link to the document and of course that same action button that they can click as well. Worth pointing out that you don't have to rely on email. So normal end users can come into the system and they're able to look at their own document tracker. And in that library, they will see a list of documents that are relevant to them that perhaps they haven't read yet, but also ones that they have done as well. So they can come into their own document tracker. It's filtered straight away by them, and they're just presented with that list of documentation within here. So normal end users don't have to wait for an email. They can come into the system proactively, have a look, make sure that they're compliant and up to date as well. Great. We'll look at some of the other views here. So we've got group by user. You can see straight away we're grouping by some of the example users that we have here. If I want to focus on somebody specifically, if it was Steve as an example here, great. It just gives me that context as to, okay, well, we've got 1 out of 2 read here. So perhaps it just prompts me as maybe the manager of this particular system just to have a quick chat with Steve. Can you make sure you're reading this, please? We've got the read, yes or no, again, so I can group everything into those categories as well. So yeah, focusing on those that haven't been read yet, tells me who they are, the particular policy, the version number that it's at. Of course, I've got a link to the document here, and of course the read yes or no column being filtered there at the moment too. So yeah, really, really useful, really insightful. It gives you that, as I said, that big brother view as to who's reading the document and who isn't. But again, there's that built-in automation to take care of the reminders for you. So again, you don't have to have that conversation or do anything manual off the back of it. It's all taken care of within here. Just as I scroll to the right-hand side, we have a couple of example columns here. So anything past the kind of tracker required is where what I'll call our off-the-shelf system ends, really. So we do have this as a packaged product ready to implement and deploy. So what you see from key documents and onwards is really just ideas or different ways that you could perhaps look to further tag your documents. We mentioned earlier about perhaps aligning it to a certain accreditation. Great, I can tag everything that's maybe relevant to ISO 27001. I can group and filter and sort. There's a simple yes or no column that relates to a key document here. Is it a key document, yes or no? We actually have another system that pulls the data from this column with regards to onboarding. So any document that's marked as yes is considered a key document. Somebody, a new starter, is added into that onboarding system, and it picks up the documents from this library and sends it to them on their first day for them to sign, read, mark themselves as compliant again. So again, it removes a lot of stress kind of with onboarding as well. There's IDs. These are all unique identifiers, so that can certainly be built into libraries here. Links to documents, we've got document tiers, and we've got things like a simple tick box, which we've already seen as well. So just gives you that kind of food for thought as to how you could perhaps look to build on some of the basic data that you get here, and how you can look to kind of make the document system feel a little bit more like you. Perfect. Also, the possibility of making this really audit friendly, I think, appeals to a lot of people that we speak with regards to the system here. I've just come into an example page that you could look to set up within the system, and this, of course, focuses purely on the ISO 9001 accreditation. But the idea here is that if you've got somebody coming to conduct an audit, you can share this page with them, and really you can set this up in a way whereby everything is underneath one roof. So the auditor is perhaps granted access to this page. They can come in here and they can be like, right, let's go through it. There's links to all the documents. It's split out into the right areas and the right sections, and it's just that way of keeping everything together in a more presentable format. So again, you can obviously see we've got the two columns here, and underneath each particular section we have the relevant documents here. You have the document tracker to complement this information as well, so you can evidence that people are up to date with your policies, procedures. You can lean on the fact that the workflow is in play, making sure that people are receiving these documents, that they are reading them, and it's just a really great way of perhaps building a page that you can set out how you would like to, that has everything underneath that underneath one roof, as I say. So a really good way of being able to capture that information.
Exactly. It goes back to that point of when you've got an auditor coming in, and it's not just for auditors, I know I keep banging on about them, but it means it's much easier for them to find things. Like although you've got that library and you've got all the documents there, and technically, yeah, you could tag them so you could filter in different ways and stuff. Some people just like to really nail down into an index like this, which is really detailed, very obvious. Do you know what I mean? You can leave the auditor to crack on and look at documents and things like that without having to sit next to them all the time and for them constantly asking questions. Where's this? Where's that? Where's the other? It's just all listed out. Makes everything a lot more streamlined, a lot more efficient, and just a lot easier for everybody involved. And say this is something that's completely customizable. It's actually an idea that one of our customers had put together. It's something that's easily customizable, so as I say, you can make it look and feel however you like.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect, Brill. And that is pretty much the system in a nutshell. As I said, it's made up of those three main areas. You've got the initial landing page with all its customizability, the ability to put it in your own branding, your imagery, and chop and change the layout and the links here. You then have the document library itself with the built-in automation based on some of the data that we've discussed today as well. So that approval process between the named reviewer, the named approver, and then the ability to send those approved documents out to the rest of the organization, albeit perhaps more granularly on some of the groups that you select. And then there's the document tracker as well. So having a little look to see, well, who's reading the documents, who isn't. Again, I've come into the group by policy view, but for the complaints policy, yeah, we've got people that have and haven't read the document, and same for the data breach policy here. So that really nice view that you can keep up to date with and manage, and yeah, just keep on top of controlling your documents within SharePoint.
Yeah, and because it is SharePoint, everything you've seen here as well, we want to stress, it is using the kind of best practices that Microsoft recommend. It's using all native SharePoint. All the workflows are built with Power Automate. We've just essentially got this as pre-built building blocks ready to install into your system. So it is something that we offer as a fixed price that we can deploy. The reason why we're not telling you the fixed price right now is because this is recorded and you could be watching it in 5 years and the price might slightly change. So if you are interested in the solution, you can reach out to us. We'll pull up our contact details in a second onto the screen. But yeah, as I say, it's all based on SharePoint. So all the features you know and love about SharePoint are all there. Even things like if you wanted like things like external sharing. So often, again, if your auditor doesn't necessarily want to come onto site, you could also share this externally to them so they can get a link, they can access it for a period of time. There's no additional SharePoint licenses are required for external sharing or anything like that. So that's all built into that. So if there's any, it also makes it much easier that if you've already got a SharePoint intranet or you're considering a SharePoint intranet, we can style this to make it look like it's a seamless experience, like it's all part of the same intranet. It just makes for a much smoother experience.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think the licensing bit that you mentioned is a really good point. If you're using Microsoft, you have access to SharePoint. It's all controlled by the Microsoft license that you have within the organization. So this is readily available for most organizations to start taking advantage of. And actually, you'll find it's a cost analysis piece. For a one-off deployment for something like this, you could save against perhaps a third-party system that you're paying for licenses on a monthly subscription. Remove that recurring cost, do a one-off implementation. It's part of technology that you're paying for already within those Microsoft licenses. So sometimes from that perspective as well, it's a really good kind of a no-brainer sometimes.
Yeah, and on that point, you often find actually this one-off fee that we're talking about, it's often less than a year's worth of a competitor subscription elsewhere, and you're using these SharePoint licenses you've already got. So you're keeping everything secure, safe under the Microsoft 365 environment you've already got. You're not paying for additional licenses, and very quickly you'll recoup the kind of the fixed price on this based on it being a lot cheaper than it would be if you were to have a subscription on longer term. So on that note, I just wanted to thank you for joining today and watching this video. Do get in touch with us if you're interested in this product. You can book a free consultation, which is basically a 1-hour meeting. It will likely be either with myself or Martin or another member of the team who will walk you through this, answer any of the questions that maybe you haven't had answered today. You can contact us either by emailing hello@valto.co.uk, or there's a link there, valto.co.uk/YouTube. That'll just take you to a contact form. You can put your details in there. The link will also be, if you're watching this after the live, the link will also be in the description below. So you can get in contact with us and say, give a no obligation quote, answer any questions you've got. And yeah, we can talk about how this can benefit you. Okay.
Great.
Brilliant. So yeah, thanks for joining today. And we'll send the recording out and keep your eyes peeled for the next webinar. Thank you.